The strongholds of the earth, one against the other, will rebel. In those days angels will go out to the four winds of heaven to make the requital of anger from the midst of the earth. They will begin to strike and to destroy with the sword and with pestilence, also with all kinds of trials. After this there will be silence on the earth, and peace will abound. Those who dwell in the earth will be healed. The earth will be constrained by its inhabitants, and the seas and islands will be filled with settlements. Settlements and habitations will become towns, and villages will grow. Earth and sea will be adorned with towns and villages, as well as with palaces and buildings. Towns will be erected on the mountains, and walls and towers in the plains. Then, underneath the silence, the winds of heaven will be stirred. Heavenly angels will walk on earth. The earth will be constrained by its inhabitants, and the sea and the islands by their settlers. They will be given a treacherous sign and a deceiving spirit, and in every place and city palaces and buildings of corruption will abound. At that time the winds of the sea will turn around, and dust will fall from heaven unto the earth. Mountains will be raining down ash for many days. The days of the months will be short. The days of the year will quickly go by. The courses of the sun and the moon will be changed, and those times will be filled with deception. The winds of heaven will be bound and will not blow. These clouds of the firmament will be held back and will not traverse the sky. The rain will not descend from heaven, and the sun's light will fade, and its light will be like that of the moon. The light of the moon will not be seen, and the stars will not shine, and darkness and gloom will reign over the face of the earth, and evil will abound on the earth among the inhabitants of the world. The earth will withhold its fruit, the mountains their vegetation. A noise will be heard from heaven. There will be horrors and chasms on the mountains, and there will be fear and trembling in various places. With the light of lightnings and in the sound of thunders, the clouds of heaven will move to and fro. Heavenly angels will appear on earth like human beings. At that time a pillar of fire will appear from heaven and will reach to the ground. Darkness will be on the earth for many days. The sun will not rise, neither the moon traverse the sky, and the stars will not be seen. During these times the cities of the sea will be covered. Also larger cities will be overthrown by the oceans. Many places will be struck by snakes. Also many people will go to destruction, and many cities will be subdued into paying tribute. Villages and hamlets will burn with fire. During these times there will be much rage on earth, and fallacy in the world will be increased. Sin will abound on the earth, and evil will stretch forth its head. Only a few will be left in the middle of the earth. Evil spirits and afflictions will increase, and will come forth to cause trouble on the earth, and to cause corruption on it. During those times wisdom will abound on earth. False prophets and treacherous teachers will teach all kinds of things. Who will be there in those days of the aforementioned wise men and scribes? Who will resemble the kingdom of heaven? This kingdom will be invisible to them. Rather, it will be withheld from them. The truth will be revealed to those who seek it. In those days there will be tumult day and night. Lofty palaces will fall, and many people will perish, and high buildings will be cast down, and will become tombs for their inhabitants. Many villages will be tossed into the sea, and their inhabitants gone into the rushing flood. During those times there will be scarcity on earth and much oppression. The people will be robbing and plundering what does not belong to them. There will be much fallacy on earth. True things will be deemed false, and what is false will be delivered. Truth will pass away from the earth. The kings of the earth will lie, and its judges will be perverted, in order to reconcile a righteous judgment with dishonest riches and richness. The earth will be hard pressed by its sins. All of its inhabitants and cities will be in an uproar, and villainy will appear on the walls of their towers. And people will be filled with deceit, and will be prepared to pronounce fornication and injustice. And in laziness will they hasten to recompense iniquity for righteousness, and wickedness for goodness. Also, their kings will become arrogant, and their truth will be deemed a lie, and their wealth rejected, also their loftiness diminished. In those days the springs on the earth will be wanting, the founts of the earth shall fail, and deep rivers will dry up. Summer days will be in winter, winter days in summer, and the days of the year will be mixed up. Division will fall onto the earth, zeal and rebellions among the inhabitants of the world. A son will silence his father in court, and a daughter-in-law will strive with her mother-in-law and will drive her out. In those days the land will be measured in a span, and a cubit of land will be brought for a mina. Vengeance of anger will visit the earth. The area requiring 1 core of seed will yield as little as 1 seah, and 1,000 vines of the vineyard will yield as little as 1 measure of vine. Many will sow, but not reap. Many will beget children, but not rear them. A man will do business day and night, yet he won't have enough bread. Fathers will bury their sons, and also sons their fathers, as it was during the years of previous generations. In those days the islands will be dashed into the sea, and those who travel the sea will be cut off altogether with the islanders. Then the times will be fulfilled, and the last days will draw near. And there will be these signs: the sun's light will fade, the moon will be kept back from its course, also the firmament will conceal its countenance. When the last days are about to draw near, great signs will begin to appear beneath the silence. A great earthquake will be on earth, a prevailing and strong clamor in the firmament of heaven, and a great uproar on earth, and it will be heard from sea to sea, and from the ends of the heaven to the ends of the earth. The clouds of the firmament will be emptied, and between them an immense fire will settle in the 4 winds of heaven, which will burn the mountain tops 4 times on a single day. Angels will appear in Zion, holy ones in Jerusalem. Also angelic hosts will appear on the waves of the sea. Then a great fear will reside over the sea, trembling will fall on the islands, and a great earthquake in all habitations of the world. And then heavenly angels will appear like fire, and will consume many people who are on their way. Then the earth and the sea will be in an uproar, and strong and mighty winds will be blowing. In those days the sun will be blotted out like sackcloth, the moon clothed as with blood, and the stars will wither like leaves from the trees. Like guardians of fire, arrows and spears will be hurled onto the earth. And then all people and all tongues will be terrified and shaken. Suddenly great horrors and fears will be upon the earth. The earth will be torn into pieces like a coat until the great abyss. Many a people, while still alive, will also be swallowed in the midst of the earth. And then the mountains will be moved from their places. Also hills will move from their sites. And then pillars of fire will appear from heaven, and a fiery furnace from the midst of the clouds. And they will appear on the firmament of heaven like horses of fire and like chariots of war, holding an iron sword and a spear of war. It will be in those days that a woman will bear a son from the tribe of Levi, and there will appear on him these signs. Something will be represented on his skin like weapons of war, the details of a breastplate, a bow and a sword, a spear and an iron dagger, and chariots of war. His countenance will be like the countenance of a burning furnace, and his eyes like burning coals. Between his eyes he has a horn whose tip is broken off, and something of which has the appearance of a serpent is coming out of it. When these signs are about to occur, then the advent of the senseless, the crooked serpent, the antichrist, will be about to appear. He will come from the ends of the land of the east, to seduce the inhabitants of the earth. He will say about himself, I am Christ. He will come out of a serpent's belly, from the intestines of an adder. With him will come many guards and many angels, and these are his signs and his awe-inspiring visions of his stature. His head is huge, his hair red, his eyes blue, and his neck strong. His sides are high, his chest is broad, his arms are long, and his fingers are short. He has 2 horns next to his ears. And he has strong flesh in his ear, as well as lean flesh. His figure is wrathful, stupendous, and furious. The figure of his stature is likewise stupendous. He will appear like lightning in the sky, and like a lamp in the camp. With him will be fiery chariots and war camps. Faster than a leopard are his horses, and bolder than the evening wolves his couriers. His stature is great and high, and floats over the mountains, equal to the clouds in the sky. And with him will come a host of serpents, and camps of Indians. Then the gates of the north will be opened before him, and the army of Mabagabel will come out, and the multitude of the Agogites and the Magogites, enormous in their statures, and mighty in their strength, and numerous in their hosts. They will take control of the earth, the expanse of the earth, to march from sea to sea, and from one end of the sky to the other. These deeds and signs he will perform. He will be running in front of his troops and his camp, and mountains and hills will be running in the run. He will go out with the sun at sunrise, and precede it on its settings, and hold it back so it cannot traverse the sky. And he will say to the moon to stand still, and it will stand still, and it will not move along. He will stretch out his hands towards the firmament of the clouds, and hold back the rain and the dew. And he will make the clouds of the firmament stand still, so that they will not move along. And he will command the winds, and they will not blow. And the deep rivers he will make flow backwards, and he will stand in the ocean up to his knees, and his animals will live in fear. And the dragons which live in the sea, will be greatly terrified. 3 times on a single day he will run from sea to sea, and from one end of heaven to the other. And he will stretch out his long arms, and gather the birds of heaven, the savage beasts and birds of prey. Yet even his hosts and camps will not be filled. He will pitch his tent opposite of Zion, and his tent will settle upon Jerusalem. The people will see him and be afraid, and tribes will be agitated with fear. The islands of the sea will live in fear, thinking that he is Christ. Many will go astray after him, for many signs and wonders he will perform. However, he is unable to raise the dead. His kingdom will last for a time, times, and half a time, that is, 3 years and 6 months. He will begin to stir up those who live in Zion, as well as the cult of those who are foreigners in Jerusalem. He will be cursed from heaven, and he will act deceitfully against those who are close to him. Then the reconciling angel will come forth from before the presence of the mighty Lord, that great power and heroic strength. With him will be angels, men of war, who will capture him in the land of the south, and the pathways of the great ocean. They will strike him with an unquenchable fiery sword from head to his knees, and split him into 2 parts, and they will toss him to the side of the sea like a giant mountain which has fallen, and like a rock which is collapsing. And his end and his destruction will occur. It will occur in the sea. All of his armies and servants will be swallowed up in the sea and will perish. Then fear will reside on earth, and all travelers and residents of the islands will be seized by a great trembling. Many people in fear and trembling will die. Many of the towns will be destroyed, and their buildings will fall, and many cities hewn down on top of those who live in them. The land will be deserted by its inhabitants, and even the seas and islands by their inhabitants. Towns and cities will be laid waste and become deserted. 10 villages will come together to live for a while on the slopes of a mountain. The way of the sea will be cut off, and the paths of the villagers and the passages torn up. Wild animals will abound in the mountains and outnumber the people. Like evening wolves, they will threaten human beings to attack them and to tear them apart. And many towns and cities will turn into abodes for wild animals, and royal palaces and lofty buildings jackals will build a home. Hawks and sparrows will glide and break into them, and only lowly and few people will be left on mountain tops. They will be dwelling in great fear and in much dread. There will be silence on earth for half a short week, and the number of years they will understand from it, and the completion of times and signs they will understand. During the time when it is, the silence will happen. The end will draw near to the end of the age, when the time of the final days will have drawn near. It will be at the completion of the last time, at the end of the age. The earth will be rent and burst open. The pillars of the earth from below will be broken off, and the repositories of fire will be opened. Mountains and hills will be thrown down into it. The earth, they will be cast into deep chasms. Who will be there on that day to command? And who will be found during that moment, where the great and awesome cross of the God of gods and the Lord of lords is beginning to appear? And it will be on that day that the Lord will command the 4 winds of heaven to blow with great movement, and with a storm and strong winds. Then mighty and awe-inspiring clouds will be gathered from all of the ends of the sky, and heavenly angels will be on the tops of them. In a hasty race they will seize the 4 winds of the earth, and cast out much lightning and severe and awe-inspiring thunder. They will terrify the entire earth. Also the clouds of the firmament will be emptied out. Fiery sparks and blazing coals will be hurled from between the clouds upon the earth, and will burn up the earth without pause. All the ends of the earth will be terrified and agitated, and fear will fall upon all people, nations, and tongues, and upon those who dwell by the seas, and those who live in the wilderness, and great fear will fall upon them, and trembling will seize them. Then from the west they will flee to the east, and from the east to the west, from north to south, and from the south to the north. And from every place and from every quarter fire of anger will meet and seize them, and again strong winds will trouble them, strong lightning will terrify them, and awe-inspiring thunder will alarm them. Those who will be there on that day, and who will be found during that moment when God of gods and the Lord of lords appears, the mighty Lord, champion of the kingdom. The earth will shake before him on that day from its axis below. Also the heavens will shake from their pillars on that day. Mountains will be turned over, and hills will melt like wax before fire, and all islands of the sea will be cut off. Also they will be sought but not found. Then springs of water will fail, and deep rivers will flow backwards. They will hasten in fear before the great King of heaven and earth, the master of all servants. And it will be on that day darkness will cover the earth, and thick darkness the nations. The earth will tremble before him, swift like lead in water. Mighty thunders will abound, and fierce and awe-inspiring lightning will not be silenced. Dark and gloomy clouds will traverse the earth. Angelic chariots will be hastening over all of the mountains, and heavenly angels will be appearing like fire in swift chariots. The earth will not be able to prevail to stand before him, nor the sun to endure before him. With the sound of mighty thunders, the dreadful earthquake, much rebuke, the flashing of much lightning, and the melodious sound of vehement thunder, the heart of all people will melt in fear and in trembling. They will not be able to stand on that day before the strength of his fortitude. And all flesh will fall asleep on that day, and nothing that creeps on the face of the earth will be left in that moment. On that great and terrible and mighty day, the earth will surely totter, the seas will surely dry up, and the earth will surely shake. And they will run and be agitated, and great horrors will be in the depths of the earth, and there will be a great and mighty vision of the heavenly firmament